Welcome to the nominations announcement for the 2018 EE British Academy Film Awards. I'm George Lamb. I'm joined by a panel of esteemed guests from the film world to discuss and dissect this year's nominations. So let me start by introducing them. Simran Hans is a journalist and film programmer. Robbie Collin is the Telegraph film critic. Kharmel Cochrane is an award-winning casting director, and Rob Hardy is an award-winning cinematographer. How are we all doing, guys?
Good.
First of all, let's talk about the new host, Patsy. It's great news, isn't it?
I think it's great.
Fantastic news.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter how good a job someone does of hosting the BAFTAs, you do need a refresh every so often. Stephen Fry's been doing it for so long.
10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's
Long
great
enough.
I think so, yeah, and it's great to see someone else take over. And hopefully, I think, you know, the BAFTAs read the room right in getting a woman to do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think she's going to do a great job. Let's talk about the films. Let's start with Best Film. Any thoughts on that? Any surprises, Robbie?
For me, I think that the interesting thing about the BAFTAs is always that they aren't ashamed to really champion British films, British set films. And so for something like Dunkirk, which I am one of the wildest fans of in existence, I think, it's been slightly frustrating in awards season so far to see it not perhaps getting the traction that I felt it deserved when I came out of that first screening, weak at the knees, you know, blubbing and totally shaken up by it. So I'm really delighted that Dunkirk has done so strongly across the board and is up for Best Film, as is Darkest Hour, of course, which is a very, very British film. And Three Billboards as well, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which might not necessarily feel like a British film when you're watching it, but it does qualify under the BAFTA rules, and it's up for Outstanding British Film as well. So, so it's nice that the kind of BAFTA British slant, to me, feels like a bit of a corrective on quite an American-centric award season so far.
Right, okay. Anything you'd like to add, guys?
Dunkirk is a great shout. I mean, it's a strong category anyway, but it's nice to see a film that works on every level. You know, it's true cinema. At least, anyway, when I saw it, it felt like that. It was like
I agree.
Bashed over their head. You know,
yeah.
And it was, yeah, it didn't give you a chance to breathe. So big fan of that. But all of them actually. I mean, they're all really strong and all very, very different as well.
What's interesting about Three Billboards is it's a film that plays to an audience. You know, I've seen it a couple of times in the cinema, and both times, you know, the audience just jumps on board within 5 minutes and goes with it. And you know, it's primarily a kind of a dark comedy, I would say, but it's being nominated for Best Film. Obviously, it's been nominated for director Martin McDonagh. It's been nominated for cinematography, and these are kind of unusual choices. And I think that shows the strength of feeling that's been required to get it nominated in the top category.
So
It's kind of as a result of it
going to do well at the awards then, Three Billboards?
Well, it did really well at the Golden Globes yesterday, so very possibly, you know, it's a film that that plays well to an audience that goes to see it. It's out in the UK this Friday as well, so I'm sure there'll be a groundswell. Although it is divisive, you know, it's tough, dark humour, and it makes some risky creative decisions that do leave you behind if you're not on board with it fully.
It's nice as well that Lady Macbeth and God's Own Country, which are kind of lower budget, not necessarily, you know, the big blockbusters. It's nice to see them up there.
Yeah. Any glaring omissions for you, Simran?
I would have liked to see Lady Bird or Get Out in there, but I think they are kind of coming up in the other categories a little bit more, in more of the craft categories, so they haven't been forgotten or anything like that.
Yeah, I think Get Out should have definitely been in Best.
Well, this is the Get Out fan club. Yeah, so we're all on board with that.
But then Daniel Kaluuya, who's up for Rising Star, has been nominated outright in leading actor. Which
you were on the panel for Rising Star, right?
I was, and can I just say I think the panel did a fantastic job this year.
Yeah. Well, that's the word on the street, anyway.
Exactly.
And you were championing Daniel as well, right?
Definitely. I'd prefer him to win leading actor, but I'd be happy with either win.
Timothy Chalamet as well from Call Me By Your Name. Yeah, another Rising Star nominee, also in leading actor. So.
Okay, that's quite a kind of unprecedented thing, isn't it?
I think normally, yeah, but it's difficult because Rising Star, the definition of that, you know, Daniel Kaluuya has been rising for 10 years or something, right? So you know, and then Timothy Chalamet has just materialised on the scene this year. Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of latitude in defining who should qualify for that award. You know, what stage of your career you have to be at. But as I say, obviously I was on the panel, so I kind of, I think the calls were about right.
Simran, talk to me about director.
So, let me just look at the
Blade Runner, Call Me By Your Name, Dunkirk.
I think Blade Runner being in there is Denis Villeneuve. I think that's kind of an interesting left field choice because it's so genre. And so to see that up for Best Director, I think that's quite interesting. Again, I would have liked to see Greta Gerwig. I would have liked to see a female director in there, but she is in original screenplay, so she's sort of represented elsewhere, and the actresses in that film are also nominated. Dunkirk, I think, you can't ignore that film, so it's good to see that in there as well. And I guess speaking of genre, Shape of Water is also a genre film, so it's interesting to kind of see these fantasy sci-fi movies being recognised for Best Director.
And they were both really widely nominated as well. The Shape of Water, I think, got the most nominations of any film this year, and then Blade Runner, I think, got 8 as well. So, you know, the fact that these are genre films which don't necessarily, I mean, goodness, particularly The Shape of Water plays tricks with genre, and it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it's kind of all over the place, but it's in a beautiful and wonderful and all-enveloping way.
Weirdly quite feel-good as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. But these films have really stormed it. You know, The Shape of Water, I think, has got 11 or 12 nominations, mainly in craft categories, but, you know, best film as well. And that Blade Runner has done as well as it has done, I think, shows that people are being, you know, they're looking quite widely at what's around and
it's got to be quite a kind of scary proposition taking on a film like Blade Runner, right? You know, and trying to do a remake of that, and because you've literally got everybody waiting for you to trip up. I think he did a pretty remarkable job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also because, I mean, it's a difficult one because there's been so much time between the original and, or rather, the first Blade Runner and this, and it's like, well, you've got a whole new audience to work at, and I think, you know, it was a big thing to take on board for a movie like that. And again, they did a phenomenal job. It looks fantastic.
Yeah. I don't really like sci-fi, and I liked it, which I thought was a kind of testament to how good it was, or how well it was made. Anyway.
Yeah.
Who would like to talk about leading actress? Ladies, let's start with you.
Well, so Saoirse Ronan's just won a Golden Globe for Lady Bird, but I don't think that means that Brits might go for her with the same kind of, I don't know, interest. I'm not sure how Lady Bird would play to a British audience because it is so specific, and it's, you know, it's a period piece, but it's a modern period piece, which people don't always respond to as well in terms of it being a prestige film. I think Frances McDormand is my prediction for who might win for Three Billboards. She absolutely carries that film. But it's nice.
She's the best as well, which is.
But it's nice to see Annette Bening in there as well. I thought the performances in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool were both really, really strong. So I'm happy to see both her and Jamie Bell nominated for that.
I don't think we should underestimate Sally Hawkins in that
I was
category,
gonna
though,
say.
because it's such an unusual role. It feels like a role, particularly that she has been waiting her whole career to play, and I don't really know anyone that could have done it half as well as she does. This is in The Shape of Water, the Guillermo del Toro film. It's just such a distinctive part.
Yeah,
Any
she was
thoughts on
phenomenal. I'd like Sally Hawkins to win. I think I was really impressed by that performance, and I think.
Well, it's so physical.
But then I really like Frances McDormand, so I mean,
Frances McDormand's got enough awards. She'll be fine.
They're just quite different performances because the Sally Hawkins one is just it's totally in her body because she doesn't speak in it. Spoilers. And in Three Billboards it's quite a talky role, so it's hard to compare.
Depends
them.
what you like, really. Yeah.
Well, yeah. How do you like your women?
Yeah, there's a lot to you're kind of. Anyway, whatever. Let's move on. Leading actor. Daniel Day-Lewis, of course. Again, we were talking beforehand, and you said that basically, if Daniel Day-Lewis makes a film, barring 9, you have to put him in.
Not to nominate him, exactly.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is repeatedly his last film performance as well. So
Yeah,
it
of course
would
it is.
seem obviously he's going to get nominated. But I have to say, he is tremendous in Phantom Thread. It's a brilliant performance, and it's a brilliant final performance as well. So the fact that he's up there doesn't feel remotely tokenistic to me. I just was blown away by his work in that film. But then Daniel Kaluuya as well. It's a totally different performance, but really, really beautifully controlled and so kind of subtle the way in which his character in Get Out adapts. He talks in different ways, different registers to absolutely everyone in that film, and you get so attuned to how careful he's being in that particular situation that he finds himself stuck in.
Talk to us about Daniel.
I watched it thinking, there's not another actor that I could have seen and sat through and felt the same way, and I think he's fantastic, and has been around for over 10 years and just really deserves this and his moment. And I thought everything he did in that film was fantastic.
And am I right to say it was the highest grossing independent film?
I think so.
Or there or thereabouts, anyway,
Yeah.
which is quite
I think
incredible.
it did phenomenally well.
We should mention Gary Oldman as well as Churchill in
Yeah.
Darkest Hour, because that performance was, I think, ever since it premiered at Telluride last year, it was pretty much earmarked as this is going to be a serious heavyweight contender when the BAFTAs roll around. And it is one of those, I mean, calling a performance transformative is such a cliche now because it's something that a lot of people you know aim to do as these kind of very curated sort of career high performances. They set out to do this. But for me, what he does in Darkest Hour is more complicated than that. It feels like a real Gary Oldman performance, in the same way that Sid Vicious all those years ago felt like a proper Gary Oldman performance. And I think, you know, you cannot, particularly after the Golden Globe win last night, you can't underestimate his chances as well.
Yeah.
But then maybe Timothée Chalamet should win for the last scene in Call Me By Your Name, where we just
Tell us
see
exactly what happened.
well, I won't say what happened, but he has a really emotional moment and the camera just holds on him for a really long time and you're just forced to experience what he's experiencing with him, and it's just so moving. It's one of my favourite scenes in all of cinema from last year.
Really?
So, yeah,
really
it's beautiful.
All right, well, I'm definitely going to check that out. Let's talk about supporting actress. Kristen Scott Thomas, Darkest Hour. What do we think?
Yeah, the one that really excites me in that category is Lesley Manville in Phantom Thread, because the film itself is this kind of three parts. I mean, it's like a kind of a mad, neurotic love triangle between Daniel Day-Lewis's Taylor Reynolds Woodcock, his sister Cyril, who's played by Lesley Manville, and his new muse, who's played by Vicky Krieps. I think it's a pity that she's not been nominated because she's the kind of missing point of this triangle. But it's great to see her in there. It's not quite as showy a role as Daniel Day-Lewis, although she has some beautiful little monologues in the film, and it's just perfectly controlled and beautifully played. So I'm really, really happy to see her there.
Anybody else in there who?
Laurie Metcalf in Lady Bird. I think she plays the mum, and I think she's brilliant. For me, that film is a two-hander. So to see her up there is really good. You're
a big Lady Bird fan.
I love Lady Bird. Yeah, I think it's great.
I thought that was great casting as well. I thought that was really interesting. You know, all the actresses that you could go for. I thought it really worked.
I want to talk about cinematography. Rob, you're up. Just catch you as you're taking a sip of water, obviously. This is your area of expertise, sir.
Yeah, I mean, really strong category, actually. All great-looking movies, but for different reasons. Again, good to see Roger Deakins in there, a master, and he's been around for a while and obviously did a great job a couple of years ago with Sicario, or maybe it was last year, I can't remember. He has a very, very specific vision that I feel translates to pretty much all the movies he shoots, irrespective of genre. So this very much feels like his kind of movie, you know. And also, again, talking about Blade Runner, a big thing to take on because of its history as a very visual piece. So I think a fantastic job done by him. Darkest Hour, Bruno, again, very beautiful, a very, very difficult thing to do when you do sort of movies like that really are actor-driven. It's a very difficult thing to sort of, I guess, to, you know, do something again a little different, and Bruno has done a fantastic job there. Hoyter, now that's a beast of a movie. You know, and obviously shooting on the big formats, 65mm IMAX and all of that, and a lot to take on. And I loved. Is
that a lot more? I know this might sound like a stupid question, but is that a lot more complicated technically?
It's really heavy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's more than that, but yeah, essentially really heavy. It's a big movie, and there's also a real sort of simplicity to it, I think, in its visual treatment that I love. And Shape of Water, it has a really elaborate sort of feel to it, again, which I really love. 3 Billboards, it works as a movie as a whole. And I think that's what's interesting about the cinematography in that, is that it doesn't particularly jump at you, but what it does is it serves the story perfectly well. I mean, I would quite like to have seen maybe Killing of a Sacred Deer in there. I think visually, stunning film. I mean, the closest I've seen to a Kubrick movie for a long time, probably.
Really, that's a big shout.
Yeah. And Lady Macbeth, I think, is worth a mention because they had very little to work with in that movie, and I think it's really economical and it works seamlessly, and it's very cleverly shot in the sense that you have a real system to the way it's put together. And
So
and
they
again,
should have got a nod for ingenuity, maybe.
yeah, for ingenuity, but also the way in which the camera serves the story, and I think they did really well in that. Also, maybe finally Beguiled, just because it was so dark, I felt that was quite brave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, guys? Cinematography?
I'd love to see Dunkirk win for cinematography. I think we should be celebrating film photography and shooting on film. And I actually saw it in 70mm IMAX, and it was one of my most memorable experiences in the cinema in a really long time. So
really,
I'd love to see that celebrated. Obviously, I think we can have digital and film, and not everybody can have the budget to make a film the way that Christopher Nolan made that film. But yeah, I'd like to see it celebrated here.
It was really accomplished, yeah.
I know we kind of touched on it before, but the EE Rising Star Award, if we could just talk through, so we talked about Daniel a little bit. What about Florence Pugh?
I thought her performance was phenomenal in Lady Macbeth. And again, there was a sort of restrained, a very restrained work that she did on there, but I just think it was it was so emotive, but it seems quite simple, but multi-layered. It was just beautiful, beautiful.
Just so strong.
And strong and brave, and yeah.
It's a huge star-making performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look back,
Yeah.
it will be, and she was in The Falling as well, a Karen Worley film, but I think when in 10 years' time she's this enormous star, people will look back to Lady Macbeth, who saw it last year. And
I can't believe that didn't get a nomination for cinematography.
Quite exactly. Or her for Best Actress. She would have been perfectly, on a level with any of the nominees in that category. I'm delighted, as I would be, to see her in the Rising Star category.
I think it's great to see Josh O'Connor in there as well, though, for God's Own Country. And I think that's a film that I would have hoped would get a little bit more love, but maybe it's quite a difficult film. I don't know. But yeah, I thought he really threw himself into that role, and I'd never seen him in anything before. I don't know if he had been in anything.
I don't think so. And I think he went through a few he lost a lot of weight. It was very. It was a very.
Took its toll.
I think he lost weight purposely for the role, but I think that just to take that on as your breakout piece is tremendous, and what he did with it was great.
It's totally fearless. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that as your first, and particularly because of the attention that the film has got since. It's
And also
it's absolutely heart on sleeve
It
stuff.
was
It's
part of the
incredible.
iFeatures scheme, so going in for something that is a risk and is low budget, I think good on him. And
He's just so vulnerable in that film,
Yeah.
and I think to be able to make yourself that vulnerable just shows an absolute fearlessness.
All right, guys. Well, listen, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. A huge thank you to all my fellow panellists for this morning. Simran Hans, Rob Hardy, Kharmel, Cochrane and Robbie Collin. Thank you very much for the discussion. Let us know what you think of the nominations with the hashtag #EEBAFTAs, and get out there and see the films you haven't seen already. To take a closer look at the essentials of filmmaking, check out BAFTA Guru, where you'll find advice from an array of brilliant people from all the craft areas. That's bafta.org/guru and at BAFTA Guru on Twitter. Please join us again on Sunday, the 18th of February on Facebook and Twitter, where the fabulous Zoe Ball will be bringing you all the action live from the red carpet and backstage at the Royal Albert Hall. And don't forget to tune in to BBC One to watch the main ceremony. Thanks again for watching. Take care.